Hello, this is me once upon a life. And although there are not many following at present, I think it's really nice to have a glide and a fly into the cyberspace, get one's wings or jump onto one's broomstick to be able to reach out in the modern world in the way that we do things, which I've been doing in many various ways professionally and now having a chat now on this live. I have many vlogs coming, so I'm really enjoying writing those at the moment, doing my fun, glittery, fairy tale themed vlogs in regards to archetypes, predator, prey, delving with artistic license into folklore and fairy tale to build identity. I know that word is bandied around ever so much of late, that it's all ID this and ID that, and prove or debate or enforce. But I think just getting down to talking of identity in a useful capacity, that it's almost as though there is anybody that's into astrology or loves spelling and words, and I love Bible phrases, and I used to do theatre. So the words that one use, a word is a word, but it can say so much. And a sentence then starts to build a pathway and lead into a story like the greatest of all, once upon a life or once upon a time. And then, of course, we get into a journey, a chapter, a book, and on and on and on it goes. And I know that truth and trying to gain perspective, to have a footholding in one's own thought and domain, to feel strong and empowered, just to have freedom in the soul. I used to believe and think that the soul was something that was inside the body, all contained, banging up against the edges. So therefore, it was like, wow, my figure and everything about the shape of my face. That's where my soul is, in this kind of glass or container, like my cup and my tea. But it's actually this framework. It's so much bigger and broader, and how we can send ourselves through the darkness to other places. So I have to remember that the frame and the body and the material isn't the container for the essence of the self. So coming into talking about the power of the storyteller and holding one's lantern and one's light in order to be able to use the light to find destiny, which is always the hardest thing. So faith, I find, again with the Bible and going to verses or the tarot, or even going to an art gallery, it's trying to see what lights up and what resonates, because there's the subconscious and there's so much beyond and behind. And if I was a trail of light, and I think maybe everything that's happened in the past is still happening, that holographically those experiences still play over and over and over and over, and it's just like a tail of light. Maybe that goes on generation after generation after generation, and they pass on the lantern all the way forward and through. So playing around with those ideas, which I do like to do, it's this fine night of energy to be able to work out the destination or the destiny beyond expectations of as we know, all those things that need to be cast aside, such as expectations and education and the whole list that I could go through them, but I think you know. So many figures and authorities and manuals and tick boxes. So yes, I'm putting on my sparkle and my tinkle and just decided that why not hop on here and just have a lovely chat, and then if anybody joins or likes to see this, it may help. The reason as well is because as I'm exploring online, and many years ago, about 5 years ago, 2021, exploring offline in order to be able to, I would say, do good. But if I look back, I believe that maybe one was enmeshed and bound within some sort of saviour complex of being saved, so therefore trying to save. Because I think often what we give is really what we want. You know, it's this rule of I'm putting out what I really need. So, like activists, they probably want people to take action, and maybe they were very neglected and nobody really took any action, so they never really felt worthy. You know, that kind of thing, maybe. Yeah, so I hopped on to a gathering and a meeting, kind of realizing that there really seems to be a fight for the soul, a cult mentality, and whether that is being in a very controlling or dominating partnership where the other person needs to possess, pin down, dictate, have such a level of control that it ends up feeling like a cult, because the world narrows down so small that one finds they're only in a corner. Even though there's a sense of encouragement, you go, well, how comes I keep facing a corner and a wall? And it's not just in relationships either. It spans out, as we know, faith, religion, politics, tribes, as we're seeing already now with the raise the colours and flags. It's almost as though one has to belong and identify and signal. Whether, you know, that's whether we could say that was a lantern, a collective lantern, or a collective lighthouse, where people are wanting to put down a camp and others are trying to navigate rocks. So it's like with the lighthouse and the lantern, just imagine that we're on an old creaky pirate ship like the one in Peter Pan, or just some kind of old ship that's creaking along, and the currency, those that have the wheel. I'm tapping my microphone here. The ones that have the wheel of, like the bankers, and the bankers are like this, maybe in Gringotts, or I can't remember what Harry Potter one is, and they're turning a big wheel like the dam, and they're controlling the water flow in the world that was the old currency, turning it off. So that everybody, if anyone remembers the 80s, it was almost like a gush and a flush of vitality. And it was just coming through in colour and style and extravagance. It was almost kind of everybody was on a lilo, kicking back and resting back, and just kind of cocktails and colour and plastic and bangles, or you name it. I don't need to go into the 80s for anyone who was in the 80s. But I think it's kind of like now, it's almost like in communism, it's almost like the water goes down and suddenly go, I feel like I'm scratching around and it's a little bit dry, and your bones dry up a bit, and you sort of kind of feel thirsty all the time, or you get that sort of in the sun and baked, and that dehydration of just feel just feel like I want to float in the sea or something. And this is very naive because I'm in fairy tale land. Because I think there's so much out there where people like facts and figures and graphs and charts and all those things. And I think sometimes it's just really nice to kind of be playful. So yeah, I find it kind of fun to think this way, that where we are now, if there, if there was money tied to water, and there were people that had levers and all sorts to be able to, you know, change the intensity and the currency and how much there was, then I think we would be pretty low. I think the swimming pool would be empty, and if one was to try and dive in, they might crack their head on a very hard surface. There might be leaves and mold, and I think people might not be having fun, or the bar would definitely be closed. The party would be over, as they say. And it's a bit like that. And I think in business as well. So for anybody and the unknown, you kind of go, well, again, I mean, even pre 2016, there was just this kind of feeling of the diving board, just spring up and down and dive in, and you felt that your government would catch you to a certain degree, or there'd be money pumped into chambers and initiatives and those startups and small businesses. It would be more like a trampoline. It would be more like, okay, it's not easy, but you kind of bounce and you pop back up on your feet. I think today I was on a call, and it was a really lovely saying. I can't remember who said it, but the facilitator said it's a bit like a child. You kind of go, well, a child falls over 50 times. And thinking in business and ourselves in terms of motivation and trying and getting on and not feeling bad at the moment if something doesn't work out, if the energy isn't there and it's not working out, or hit a wall, or get rattled, or you think, oh, I'm not being myself. That is absolutely completely normal. So throw some Tinkerbell glitter, or get your wizard wand out and put on your big wizard cap and go, I've got the intelligence to really get up the next day and make it different, and get up the day after that, and just keep doing one day after another. So like the child, learning to walk, fall over 50 times, but the baby doesn't then turn around and say, I really don't think this is for me. It just doesn't happen. No, it doesn't happen. So thinking about storytelling and storytellers, and have some tea. I'm on 13 minutes already on my live. I will have a lovely slurp and sip of my tea. I feel quite rude not speaking. See this on a lot of YouTubes. Because it's a delivery to you, and I am here to speak to you and anybody who watches. There is a kind of pressure to fill up all the space. But I have to say, this is a very nice cup of tea. Very good indeed. Nice and warm. In England, tea's always got us through. Yeah, so thinking about the lantern and the storyteller. I've got my blusher brush here. I'm just looking at it, and I realised, and see it. I would to see if it'll. Don't know if it's gonna. There you go. It's a bit too close. So this blusher brush looks like a witch's broomstick. Look. Wish I had a Bible verse for that. That's a very interesting thing I found is I love the Bible. Absolutely adore it. Oh, I do. I mean, I love drama, Shakespeare, Chekhov, language, and it is beautiful. Really, really, really is beautiful. But I also love magic. And again, like everything, for some unknown reason, there always seems to be a divide. There always has to be a camp, identity, and belonging somewhere. So, say if one wanted to go and share the Bible and learn with other people, as I have done, then one has to relinquish everything outside of that. If one wants to, which I think it's actually if one wants to go into tarot or esoteric, it's so much more forgiving. There is more acceptance and exploration and curiosity. It's funny that curiosity killed the cat. That's one, isn't it? That's an interesting one to look into because sometimes it's very true. Depends where the nose is going and why the nose is going there. But I know that I've often had a nose, and let's talk about the lantern. I've often had a nose that has been not heading in towards the light, but I've had a nose that's been heading towards the darkness. Because it wasn't really about my destiny. It was very much about trying to get into the mind and the head and the soul of another person. And that, I think, is always going to be a surefire way to end up going down some dark alleyways and meeting lots of other very lost souls that also decided that they were going to spend their lives trying to hack and crack and find gaps within the souls and minds and bodies of others. To the degree where it was turned into the old Captain Hook and turned into a sport. And maybe the dark and light and having one's lantern in their story is as simple as that. This is why the graphs and the charts and pushing all that logic stuff and saying this is just thought play can be very refreshing. Because if I was to carry my lantern and tell my story and share my experiences and just talk as I am right here, with no fear, yes, one needs to be careful and gentle, and one could say so much about, say, Hansel and Gretel, because we both know that they were breadcrumbed to the gingerbread house and enticed in with lots of lovely, sweet temptations because they were hungry and looking for home, only to end up nearly being devoured in an oven, one as a slave and the other ready to be cooked and devoured for their youth. So we know that these archetypes are extraordinary ways to communicate with each other in order to be able to talk about things. How children are treated, and how sometimes the old negative, bitter, all consuming elder wants to devour them for sustenance. We all understand this as predator and prey. And what's tricky and difficult right now is being able to speak plainly, actually. And as things are evolving and changing, and the world and our communities is shifting as well and becoming more diverse, I think the fears are very much about intention. Which tent are you in? And what does the tribe actually believe? We all, at the end of the day, do not want to be devoured. But we do have a situation where there are those that want to gather together to share tips and tricks in order to be able to plunder what they perceive as treasure. And the ultimate treasure is the lantern and light of life and our soul, our bodies, our minds, and our energy and our time. And if any harm comes to any aspect, a violation of what we call boundaries or something that could be more vicious and visceral, all of us know in our heart of hearts that it's the time to endure, to overcome, to regenerate, to get our lantern lighters inside, whether there's spirits within, guardians or helpers, that if somebody comes and they steal the light from in my lantern, or they blow it out because somehow it makes them feel better that they're not alone, because it can be that simple sometimes. In some other people's story, they may never have really felt or experienced what it was like to have their own light and to be able to walk in that. And if it's never been tasted and it's never been possessed, then to see it and extinguish it, and then to not feel so alone because the person like Tinkerbell or Wendy has been shot down. There's a strange, perverse idea of having a companion, even if they are wounded and on the floor, than watching them fly high when you can't keep up. And if one has died inside, or they've had so many fractures and abuses, or they've turned it all into a gnarly, bitter, hyper defensive way, or they've gone down those alleyways and decided, I'm going to split off of myself and I'm going to end up finding my way of hooking into others and worming into others so that I can pull their strings and I can make them dance, and now I feel like I am the master. Because that temporarily, that can feel really, really good. Yes, there may be marionettes dropped and broken and in a heap on the floor, but there are so many more out there. I'll take a new job, I'll move to a new place. Now I can get on my phone and I can go onto any app and swipe away to my heart's content and find myself. Another one to make it dance and dance to my tune. Because if it's dancing to my tune and I get to keep it in my house, and I realise that the worse I am, and the more I poke it and provoke it and bring it down, the more I see its strings shake, the less it seems to go out. And I know where it is, and I have more freedom knowing where it is until it breaks. And that, sadly, is what a lot of people end up doing. Maybe because they took the wrong turning, or maybe they became so fed up and broken that they were like, never going to feel it. Or maybe they got into a position where they didn't have the time or the space, or they'd managed to get so much power at such a giddy height they couldn't afford to feel it because they were afraid that they'd lose their very position. Fear of humiliation, fear of shame, fear of being pointed at and laughed at, or being an ugly, broken mess. And seeing that it's possible to string people up and make them dance and play with them because their hearts are open and there are so many loving and caring people out there. Well, the one that's done it, the predator, knows it's possible. And maybe once they've crossed those lines and then they've spotted others like them, they couldn't let their guard down because they were too afraid it would happen to them, because they'd seen how foolish it was. Like when Wendy gave her heart to Peter, she was shot down. Storytellers, for so many hundreds of years and beyond, have been giving us gifts to keep us in the right light, that we can tap into our magic and know when it's okay to walk into the light, which I know many people say, but it's very difficult. A good heart wants to see every human being as one having so much potential. And we have to realize that every book has its place in the library. There is the fairy tale section and the fantasy section. And you'll meet certain people there that you would not meet, that maybe hung around in the crime and thriller or in the boxing, defense, and more violent war sections. And not everybody sticks to one department. But it's very important to have context and to realise what one is wearing and the colour of one's lantern when they arrive. If I wanted to have a golden light and a golden flame, and I wanted to have some sparkle and glitter, well, like any species in the world, I have to work out that when my wings are spread, that I'm not a target. And having the backpack and the cloak to throw over and to shroud oneself in the darkness, one has to do it sometimes, or even to wear camouflage if one is in a wood and there are wolves on the prowl, covering in leaves and being chameleon. It's a huge part of our story. So maybe I'll come back on and do some more of these, but I'm looking forward to, I've written lots of scripts doing my fairy tale vlogs, putting on my gold sparkle and my crown to share some of those with a twinkle of wit and humour, which I think we all need right now. Because being human, comedy and dress up boxes and play, it's for adults as well. We need our sparkle, we need our colour. Because every single beginning has many, 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 many different ends.